The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 23 years too late. Sarah's handwriting, shaky now with age, told me my daughter believed I was dead, that the woman I'd loved more than my own breath had erased me from our child's life so completely that Emma grew up an orphan with a living father. My name is Michael Torres. I'm 58 years old, and I fought in Desert Storm when I was 25, a lifetime ago, though some days it feels like yesterday. The sand still gets in my dreams sometimes, gritty between my teeth when I wake up gasping. But that's not the war that broke me. The real war began when I came home to an empty house and a note on the kitchen table. The Greyhound from Phoenix to Tucson runs twice daily, and I've been taking the afternoon route every few months for the past year, ever since I learned Emma lived there. Not stalking, I'm not that far gone, just hoping for a glimpse of the daughter I'd never known. Sarah's letter had included a photo, a young woman with my dark hair but her mother's delicate features, standing in front of what looked like a university building. 23 years old, a whole person I'd missed becoming. That October afternoon the bus was nearly empty. Just me, an elderly man sleeping near the front, and a young woman about 3 rows back, typing furiously on a laptop. I'd chosen my usual seat, middle of the bus, aisle side, where I could see everyone and no one could get behind me. Old habits. 20 minutes into the ride she closed the laptop with a sharp snap and let out a frustrated sigh. I glanced back, force of habit, always aware of my surroundings, and caught her eye. She had the kind of face that held intelligence and exhaustion in equal measure. Technical problems? I asked, turning slightly in my seat. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. More like existential ones. I'm writing my senior thesis on the psychological impact of war on families, and I'm hitting a wall. The irony wasn't lost on me. What kind of wall? I'm trying to understand how veterans' children process abandonment when their fathers just disappear. But I don't have any real primary sources. Just academic papers and statistics. She paused, studying my face. You look like you might know something about that world. I could have lied. Should have. But something in her voice, a raw honesty that reminded me of Sarah when she was young, made me answer truthfully. I served in the Gulf War, I said simply. Infantry. Her eyes brightened with interest, not the usual mix of pity and awkward gratitude I'd grown accustomed to. Would you mind if could I ask you about it? Just for research purposes. I found myself nodding before I'd really decided. Sure. She moved to the seat across the aisle from me, and for the next hour I told a stranger things I'd never told anyone. Not the therapists at the VA, not the few friends who'd stuck around after I came back changed, not even Sarah before she left. I told her about the weight of the desert heat, how it pressed down on you like a living thing. About the way the sand got into everything, your gear, your food, your lungs, until you were breathing the war even when you slept. I told her about Rodriguez, who'd been 19 and kept a picture of his girlfriend taped inside his helmet, and how he'd stepped on an IED 3 days before we were supposed to rotate home. The thing about war, I said, watching the Arizona landscape blur past the window, is that it follows you home. Not just the memories, though those are bad enough. It's like it rewires something fundamental in your brain. You come back to a world that kept spinning while you were gone, but you're still operating on battlefield time. She was taking notes, but I could tell she was really listening, not just collecting data. How does that affect relationships with family? I was quiet for a long moment, remembering. You love them more than ever, but you can't reach them. It's like there's this invisible barrier made of all the things you can't talk about, all the ways you've changed that they can't understand. And the worst part is you start to believe maybe they're better off without you. Did you have a family when you came back? The question hit like a physical blow, but I answered anyway. A wife and a daughter I barely got to know. My voice cracked. My wife, she tried. But I wasn't the same man who'd left. I was angry all the time, jumping at loud noises, staying awake all night because sleep meant nightmares. Sarah, my wife, she'd find me standing guard by the baby's crib at 3 in the morning with a baseball bat in my hands. The young woman had stopped taking notes. She was just listening now, her face soft with something that looked like understanding. I scared them. I continued. Not intentionally, never intentionally. But when you've been trained to see threats everywhere, it's hard to turn that off. One night Sarah accidentally knocked over a lamp and I reacted like we were under attack. Grabbed her arm, pushed her behind the couch, all in the span of 2 seconds. She had bruises for a week. What happened to them? Sarah left, took Emma, our daughter, and moved across the country. I got a letter a few weeks later saying it was better this way, that Emma deserved to grow up feeling safe. I never fought it, maybe I should have, but she was probably right. I looked at this young woman who'd somehow gotten me to spill my entire broken history, and I felt something shift in my chest. The hardest part is knowing your daughter is out there somewhere, growing up thinking her father didn't want her. That's the war that never ends, wondering what kind of person she became, if she's happy, if she ever thinks about the dad who disappeared. The girl was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she stared at me. What was your daughter's name? Emma, I said. Emma Torres. Her face went white. The notebook fell from her hand and clattered to the floor between us. What did you just say? Her voice was barely a whisper. Emma Torres. She'd be about 23 now. The math that had haunted me for years. Why? She was shaking. My name is Emma Torres. The world tilted. Everything. The bus, the highway, the sound of the engine seemed to fade into white noise. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. That's not possible, I managed. But even as I said it, I was seeing it. The dark hair, the shape of her nose, the way she held her head when she was thinking. Features I recognized from old mirrors, from family photos I'd kept hidden in a shoebox for 23 years. My mother told me you were dead, she said, her voice breaking. She said you died in the war. That's why I'm writing this thesis. I thought it would help me understand the father I never knew. Emma. Just saying her name was like learning to breathe again. Oh God, Emma. We sat there in the middle of that Greyhound bus, staring at each other across 23 years of lies and loss and misplaced grief. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into the hug I'd been saving since she was 6 months old, but I didn't know if I had the right. You sound just like my dad, she said, and then she broke down completely. That's when I lost it. 23 years of carefully controlled emotion, of pushing down the grief and guilt and desperate love I'd carried for this child I'd never known came pouring out. I was sobbing like I hadn't since Sarah left, ugly, broken sounds that came from somewhere deeper than my chest. Through my tears I saw her move across the aisle, saw her sit in the seat next to me, and then I felt her hand on my shoulder, tentative at first, then firmer. I hated you, she whispered. My whole life I hated you for leaving us, for choosing war over family, for being a coward who couldn't handle real life. Each word was a knife, but I deserved every cut. I used to fantasize about meeting other veterans' kids, asking them how they dealt with having a father who abandoned them. I thought if I could understand the psychology behind it, maybe I could stop hating you long enough to grieve properly. Emma. But listening to you talk about us, about Mom and me, you never left, did you?
What, really?
You were pushed out. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She told me you didn't want to be a father, that the war had made you violent and unstable and you'd chosen to disappear rather than get help. I believed her because what else was I supposed to do? She was all I had.
Your mother.
I had to stop, collect myself. Your mother was protecting you. Maybe not in the right way, but she was protecting you from me, from who I was when I came back. Were you really that dangerous? The question I'd been asking myself for 2 decades. I don't know. I was broken, maybe dangerously so, but I never would have hurt you, either of you, not intentionally. She made you disappear so completely that sometimes I wondered if I'd imagined having a father at all. No pictures, no stories, no relatives on your side. It was like you were never real. I pulled out my wallet with shaking hands and showed her the photo I'd carried for 23 years, a hospital picture of me holding her when she was 2 days old. Her tiny fist wrapped around my finger, both of us looking impossibly young. She stared at it like it was a miracle. You kept this. I kept everything. Every report card your mother sent the first few years. Every school photo, every Christmas card with your height and weight penciled in the corner. I have a whole box of your life that I was never part of. She sent you those things. For the first 3 years. Then they stopped coming. I'd never told anyone about those care packages that had been my only connection to my daughter. How I'd memorized every detail of every photo, every scrap of information about her development. I think she realized it was cruel to both of us. Emma was quiet for a long time, processing. The bus had entered Tucson's city limits, and I realized our time was almost up. That in a few minutes, she'd walk off this bus and I'd lose her again, maybe forever. I live here, she said suddenly. In Tucson. I'm finishing my master's at the university. I know, I admitted. I've been taking this bus for a year, hoping I might see you. I never expected this. What were you going to do if you saw me? I don't know, maybe nothing. Maybe just know that you were real, that you were okay. I paused. I never wanted to disrupt your life. I just wanted to know you existed. The bus was slowing down, pulling into the station. Neither of us moved to gather our things. I have so many questions, she said. I have 23 years of answers if you want them. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since she'd learned who I was. Are you okay now? The PTSD, I mean, some days are better than others. I've been in therapy for 15 years. I take medication. I work as a night security guard at a hospital, which sounds like the worst job for someone with hypervigilance issues, but it actually helps. I feel useful, and I can see everyone coming and going. I managed a small smile. I'm not the same man who scared your mother, but I'm not sure I'm ready to be anyone's father either. Maybe you don't have to be, she said quietly. Maybe we could just figure out how to be something else. Friends, maybe. Or just two people who share some DNA and want to know each other. The bus had stopped. The driver was announcing the Tucson station. Other passengers were shuffling toward the exit. Would you like to get coffee? I asked, the words coming out in a rush. I mean, if you don't have somewhere you need to be, we could just talk more. She smiled, and for the first time I saw myself in her expression, the way the left corner of her mouth lifted higher than the right, the way her eyes crinkled slightly, features I'd forgotten I had until I saw them reflected in my daughter's face. I'd like that, she said. But I need to know, are you going to disappear again? Because I don't think I could handle losing you twice. The question hung between us like a bridge, waiting to see if I was brave enough to cross it. I'm not going anywhere, I said, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything in my life. Not unless you ask me to. We walked off that bus together, father and daughter meeting for the first time in 23 years. The coffee shop across from the station was nearly empty, just us and an elderly couple sharing a newspaper in the corner. We sat across from each other at a small table, and for a moment, neither of us knew where to begin. Tell me about your thesis, I said finally. She laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her. I think I might need to completely rewrite it now. My professor is going to think I've lost my mind when I explain why my research took such a personal turn. What's your major? Psychology with a focus on trauma and family systems. I thought I was drawn to it because of my own issues with abandonment, but now, she shook her head. Now I wonder if it was always about trying to understand you. Your mother, how is she? Emma's expression grew complicated, angry still. She remarried when I was 8, a good man named David who legally adopted me and has been the only father I've known, but she's never gotten over what happened between you two. Sometimes I catch her staring off into space and I know she's thinking about that time in her life. Does she know you're here, that you were coming to Tucson? She knows I go to school here, but she doesn't know about the thesis topic. I was planning to surprise her with it when I finished, show her that I'd finally found a way to make peace with having a dead father. Emma's voice caught. Except you're not dead. I'm sorry, I said, though the words felt inadequate. I'm sorry for all of it. For scaring you both, for not fighting harder to stay in your lives, for letting you grow up thinking I didn't want you. Were you scared? She asked. When I was born? The question caught me off guard. Terrified. But not of you, of failing you, of not being good enough, of not knowing how to keep you safe in a world that suddenly seemed full of dangers I'd never noticed before having a child. Did the war make that worse? I nodded. Everything felt like a threat. Every stranger who looked at you in the grocery store, every car that drove too slowly past our house, every sound in the night, I was exhausting to live with, I'm sure. Mom used to have nightmares, Emma said quietly. Even years later, she'd wake up talking about checking locks and keeping the baby safe. I always thought she was afraid of burglars or something, but now I wonder if she was dreaming about you. The weight of what I'd put them through settled on me like a stone. I never wanted to be the thing she was afraid of. Tell me about before, Emma said. Before the war, what were we like as a family? So I told her about how Sarah and I had met in college, how we'd gotten married too young and been deliriously happy about it. About the way Sarah had glowed during her pregnancy, how she'd insisted on painting the nursery yellow because we wanted to be surprised about the sex, how I'd spent hours assembling the crib, reading the instructions out loud to her belly and asking the baby for advice. I told her about the night she was born, how Sarah had labored for 18 hours, and I'd held her hand through every contraction, how when Emma finally arrived, tiny and perfect and screaming, I'd cried harder than Sarah had. How for the first few months I'd been the one to get up for the 2 a.m. feedings because I couldn't bear to sleep when I could be spending time with my daughter instead. You were this impossibly small person with these huge dark eyes that seemed to see everything, I said. You rarely cried, but when you did you'd get this indignant expression like you couldn't believe the world had the audacity to disappoint you. You had your mother's stubbornness from day one. Emma was smiling through her tears. I still get that expression according to my friends. Your mother used to say you were an old soul in a baby's body. You'd study people's faces like you were trying to figure out their whole life story. When did it start to go wrong? The question I'd been dreading. I got my deployment orders when you were 4 months old. I was supposed to be gone for 6 months, maybe 8. It ended up being 13 months, and when I came back, I stopped remembering. The house that had felt foreign, the baby who didn't recognize me, the wife who looked at me like I was a stranger wearing her husband's face. When I came back, you were walking, talking a little. You called David dated, even though Sarah swore she'd been showing you my picture every day. And I couldn't handle it. I'd missed everything. Your first steps, your first words, your first Christmas. I felt like I'd lost my family to the war, even though they were right there in front of me. Is that when the problems started? That's when they got worse. I'd been having issues overseas, nightmares, hypervigilance, anger, but I thought coming home would fix it. Instead, it made everything more intense because now I had something precious to protect, but I couldn't tell the difference between real threats and imaginary ones. We talked until the coffee shop closed, then walked slowly through downtown Tucson as the sun set behind the mountains. Emma told me about her childhood, her adoptive father who'd been patient and kind, her decision to study psychology, her serious boyfriend who was also working on his graduate degree. I told her about my job, my small apartment, the photography hobby I'd picked up in recent years as a form of therapy. I take pictures of families, I said. At parks, mostly. Parents pushing kids on swings, families having picnics. It sounds creepy when I say it like that, but it's not voyeuristic. It's more like, I'm documenting the life I missed having. Can I see some? I showed her the photos on my phone, candid shots of fathers teaching their children to ride bikes, mothers braiding their daughters' hair on park benches, families laughing together on hiking trails. The images were beautiful, full of light and genuine emotion. These are incredible, she said. You have a real gift. It's just a hobby. No, it's more than that. You're capturing something essential about family love. Maybe you should consider doing this professionally. The idea had never occurred to me. I don't know if people would trust someone like me to photograph their families. Someone like you, someone with my history, my issues. Emma stopped walking and turned to face me. Dad, she caught herself, looked embarrassed. Sorry, I don't know what to call you. I'd like it if you called me Dad, I said quietly. If you're comfortable with that. Dad, she said, testing the word. Your issues don't define you, your talent, your kindness, your ability to see beauty in family moments, even when you've been denied your own. That's who you are. We'd reached the bus station where I'd need to catch the late bus back to Phoenix. Neither of us wanted to say goodbye. Can I call you? Emma asked. I mean, do you have a phone number I can reach you at? I laughed, a sound that felt rusty from disuse. I've had the same number for 15 years, hoping someday you might want to use it. We exchanged information, and I gave her the address where I'd been sending Christmas and birthday cards that had been returned to sender for 2 decades. I want to meet her, Emma said suddenly. Your mom, my grandmother. Sarah told me both my grandparents on your side were dead, but I found your mother's obituary last year when I was researching family history. She died in 2019. My mother, I'd lost her 5 years ago, had attended her funeral alone because I'd never told Emma's side of the family that I'd found them again. Another regret to add to the pile. She would have loved you, I said. She kept asking about you until the end. I had to keep telling her you were fine, that you were growing up happy and healthy, even though I didn't really know. What was she like? Fierce, protective. She never forgave Sarah for keeping you from us, but she understood why it happened. She used to say that sometimes love means letting go, even when it destroys you. The late bus was boarding. I hugged my daughter, actually hugged her for the first time in 23 years. She felt solid and real in my arms, not like the ghost child I'd been carrying in my heart for so long. This isn't goodbye, she said fiercely. We're going to figure this out, all of it. You, me, mom, the whole mess. What if your mother doesn't want to see me? Then we'll deal with that too. But I think she needs to see you as much as you need to see her. I think you both need to finish what got interrupted all those years ago. The bus driver was calling final boarding. I had to go. I love you, I said. The words I'd been saving for 23 years. I've loved you every single day since you were born, and I'll love you every day until I die. I love you too, Dad. I got on that bus a different man than the one who'd boarded in Phoenix. For the first time in decades, I felt something that might have been hope. Emma called me the next morning, then again that evening. We talked every day for the next 2 weeks, sharing stories, filling in the gaps of our separate lives. She told me about confronting Sarah, about the fight they'd had when Emma revealed she'd found me. She cried for 3 hours, Emma reported. Then she got angry, then she cried some more. She keeps saying she was protecting me, but I think she was protecting herself too. From what? From having to share me with someone she wasn't sure she could trust. From having to face the fact that maybe there were other ways to handle the situation back then. Sarah had agreed to meet me. 1 coffee, Emma said. 1 conversation to, what? Achieve closure, forgive each other. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for, but I was willing to try. We met at a cafe in Scottsdale, halfway between Phoenix and Tucson. I arrived 30 minutes early and sat in my car, trying to calm my racing heart. When I saw her walk in, I barely recognized the woman I'd once loved more than life itself. Her hair was silver now, shorter than she used to wear it. She moved with the careful precision of someone who'd learned not to trust the world to be gentle with her. But when she saw me, when our eyes met across that crowded cafe, I saw the Sarah I'd married. The girl who'd believed in forever and happy endings and love conquering all. Hello, Michael, she said, sitting across from me at the small table I'd chosen. Hello, Sarah. We stared at each other for a long moment, 23 years of silence stretching between us. You look good, she said finally. Healthier than before. So do you. Emma showed me photos. You have a nice life. I do. David is a good man. Patient. Nothing like. She stopped herself. Nothing like me. I finished. It's okay to say it. Nothing like who you were then, she corrected. Emma says you're different now. I am. It took a long time and a lot of help, but I'm not the same man who came back from the desert. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared, Michael. You have to understand. I was 23 years old with a baby, and the man I married had turned into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who looked at shadows like they were enemies, who couldn't sleep, who grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises when I surprised him. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. I kept waiting for you to get help. I begged you to see someone, to talk to me, to let me in. But you just got more and more distant, more angry, more dangerous. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. I was afraid of you. In my own home I was afraid of my husband, and I felt so guilty about that fear because I knew you'd been through something terrible. But I had to protect Emma. You did the right thing, I said, and meant it. You protected her from me when I couldn't protect her from myself. Did I? Because she spent 23 years hating a father who never abandoned her. She grew up thinking she wasn't worth staying for. She grew up safe. That's what matters. We talked for 2 hours. About the early days of our marriage, about Emma's childhood, about the choices we'd made and the prices we'd paid. Sarah told me about the years of therapy, the guilt that had eaten at her, the way she jumped every time David raised his voice, even though he'd never given her reason to fear him. I told her about my own journey through therapy, the medications that had helped, the way I'd learned to manage the hypervigilance and nightmares, about the photography, the quiet life I'd built, the way I'd carried my love for both of them through all the dark years. I never wanted to erase you, she said, but Emma was so young, and she kept asking where Daddy was, and it seemed kinder to let her think you'd died a hero than to explain that you'd left because you couldn't handle being a father. Except I didn't leave because I couldn't handle being a father. I left because I couldn't handle being the kind of father I'd become. The distinction mattered, I realized. It was the difference between abandonment and sacrifice, between selfishness and love. I know that now, Sarah said. Emma helped me see it. You were sick, not selfish. I was both, I said honestly. But I'm trying to be better. When we said goodbye that day, Sarah hugged me. It was brief, almost formal, but it was forgiveness. Or at least the beginning of it. Emma and I have been building a relationship slowly, carefully. We text every day, talk on the phone twice a week, and see each other once a month. I've met her boyfriend, a kind young man who studies environmental science and makes her laugh. I've been to her graduation, where she received her master's degree in psychology with highest honors. Her thesis, rewritten to include primary source interviews with both a veteran and his adult child, won the department's award for best research. Sarah and David invited me to Emma's graduation party. It was awkward at first, me, the ex-husband who'd been dead for 23 years, standing in the backyard of the life that should have been mine. But Emma moved between us easily, naturally, like she'd been navigating divorced parents her whole life instead of discovering she had 2 living parents just 6 months before. I've started doing family photography professionally. Emma was right, I do have a gift for capturing the moments that matter. Turns out missing those moments in my own life made me hyper-aware of them in others' lives. I see the father teaching his daughter to swing a bat and I remember what I lost. I see the mother wiping ice cream off her toddler's face, and I remember Sarah doing the same for Emma. But instead of making me bitter, it makes me grateful. Grateful to witness these ordinary miracles, grateful to preserve them for families who get to keep what I had to give up. Emma brought Sarah to one of my photography sessions last month, a family portrait for Emma and her boyfriend. As I watched through my lens, I saw something I'd been too broken to see 23 years ago. My daughter had grown into exactly who she was supposed to be. Strong, compassionate, intelligent, fierce when she needed to be, and gentle when she chose to be. She was the best of both Sarah and me, with none of our damage. She's incredible, I told Sarah afterward as we watched Emma and her boyfriend walk ahead of us through the park. She is, Sarah agreed. And she's half you, Michael. The good parts of you that I fell in love with, they're all still there in her. That night, Emma called me like she does every Sunday. How are you doing, Dad, really? It's a question she asks me every week, and I've learned to answer honestly. Some days are harder than others. The nightmares still come sometimes. I still flinch at unexpected sounds, still scan rooms for exits, still sleep with a light on. But I'm not the broken man who scared his family away. I'm not the angry veteran who couldn't separate past from present. I'm Emma's father, imperfect but present, damaged but healing. I'm good, I told her, sitting in my small apartment with photos of her covering every surface. For the first time in 23 years, I'm actually good. I'm proud of you, she said, for getting help, for not giving up, for being brave enough to get on that bus, even when you didn't know if you'd ever see me. I'm proud of you too. For choosing to know me despite everything, for helping your mother understand, for giving an old soldier a second chance at being a father. You never stopped being my father, she said firmly. You were just deployed, a really, really long deployment. But you're home now. Home. Yes, I thought, looking at the photo on my nightstand, the three of us at Emma's graduation, Sarah and David on one side, Emma and her boyfriend in the middle, and me on the other side, all of us smiling. We're not a traditional family, but we're family nonetheless. Complicated, reconstructed, but real. The war followed me home from the desert, but it didn't win. It took 23 years, a chance encounter on a Greyhound bus, and a daughter brave enough to forgive the father she'd never known, but love found a way. I told a strange girl on the bus about the war, and she gave me back my life. That's the thing about healing, sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places, in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes it comes from a conversation with a stranger, who turns out to be the person you've been missing your whole life. Sometimes it comes from realizing that love doesn't always look like staying, and forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it comes from learning that it's never too late to come home.